Hey everybody, welcome back to Combustion Junction. I am Steve with the Honda CM400T CafeRacer project. Today is part 2 of wiring. Got the under the seat stuff done, moving up to the headlight, and all the wonderful things that come up with replacing the stock headlight. So let's jump in. What I've got to work with is the loom, which now comes from the back up here with all the stock plugs on it. None of this stuff has been cut. The first thing I've got attached right here is the key. I'm gonna move my key back probably somewhere under the tank here-ish on this side. So I'm going to have to strip a little bit of that loom out to move that back, but I just wanted it identified so I knew which one I was moving. So I've just actually put the key in there. It's in the off position. Other harnesses I have are the 3 main big ones off the lighting control panel on the left hand side, stock plug to stock plug, the kill switch and starter and everything, stock plug to stock plug on this side. The third which I have is the original speedo cluster. Obviously I'm putting this aftermarket one on. It just has loose ends right now. So I've cut this one off the original and I labeled all the wires. So basically what I'm going to do is just solder in to give that the stock connection so it's a plug and play as well. And other than that, a couple of the little leftover guys are basically lights and turn signals. So before I get the headlight on, let's get this off and this wired up. I've got my cheat sheet for these wires. I've got these all marked. It should be a pretty straightforward thing. This doesn't have a low oil pressure light. So I'm gonna have to decide what I'm gonna do there. Do I use another light for something else, or do I just skip it and add one to the dash somewhere? Maybe I'll just do that. Maybe I'll use one of the original mounting holes for the handlebars and throw like an LED in there for an oil pressure light. So let's get this off, get this part wired up, and then let's plug everything in, try and jam into the headlight and see where it goes. A little bit, my camera battery died, so I figured while I was recharging it I would just get the headlight fixture on and just see how things fit. And as you know, my original idea was to just get it back to stock, get as much in here as I could, and you know, deal with whatever wiring got moved later. This bucket is way smaller than the stock one, as well as because my handlebars, which used to be up here and needed a foot more of wire, are now down here. All that extra loom, all that extra stuff, it's absolutely no way I'm going to get it all inside. It was kind of wishful thinking and I had to try it, but it didn't work. So I have to move on to plan B. And that's plan B. What I'm going to do, I've stripped off the entire loom. So this trunk that you see here was the one that ran up in between and went into the headlight. These two guys here, these are the left and right handlebar controls. I've just wrapped them around the headstock, come back here, because they're gonna roughly be under the tank somewhere here. This guy here, which I've plugged in, this is the now finished speedo cluster, which also has, like I said, high beam indicator and some turn signal stuff. I think I'm going to want this to go in the headlight bucket. And the reason for that is mainly because this wire, this signal wire, had to come from the headlight plug which has to be in the headlight bucket. The only 3 wires that get in the way of separating this plug from the other plugs on the harness is, well, there's an oil pressure sender wire, which right now goes nowhere because it was the one that was going to get rerouted down to where it comes out on the oil cooler. I have a thick black wire coming off, it goes in multiple directions. This is battery power. I'm not sure if it's switched or unswitched, but it's pretty heavy duty battery power. And then I have this green guy, which is ground. So those two I'm gonna have to cut, and then that actually separates my speedo cluster plug from the rest of the loom, which then takes these 3 plugs, remember left control, right control, and key, and move them back anywhere I want to do on the backbone of the bike. And then what I'm going to have to do is attach maybe a couple feet of wire to tap back into these. So let me snip those 2 and mark them, and then we'll move on to the next step. So now this part can now go into the headlight bucket where it will be plugged in to this guy. And I'm okay with just having like 1 or 2 plugs is okay with a little bit of wire with this headlight, but the entire loom that was in there before wasn't cutting it. So I'm gonna throw those together just so it's in place. My oil pressure wire, which is the hanger outer one, will get reintegrated into the loom and will come down and tap off the actual pressure sender. Even though there's no warning light right now, I want to wire it and then add a warning light. That's my horn. It's going to stay where it is, so those guys can float around. So now what I've got is these 3. I've got to tap into the black and the green, which I just cut, and then that'll run back up this loom and into where I cut them on this end. Before I do that, I need to get my headlight plug back into the headlight bucket. What I'm going to do is cut back this housing to maybe just between the forks, and then I want to pull these separate. So just this clump of wires I want to pull back and run into the bucket. The rest of this I want to stay out here under the tank. So let's cut those. You can see now I'm getting a good separation. I'm going to take this little bundle and stick it in the bucket. Let's clean it out of the way. And then this guy back there. So that's as much as I think needs to go into the headlight bucket. And that's probably enough for the amount of space I have left. Even I'm a little worried about that thick plug, but I think it should work. So now I'm going to turn these back on themselves so my loom kind of stays on the right path. And then these guys, I'd like, if I could, now I'm purely guessing right now at tank space, but I think I have enough. So they sat up there. The bulk of my loom is there. The only thing I have left is my key, which I wanted somewhere here under the tank to plug it in. It didn't really matter if it was this side or that side. I'm kind of thinking on the right side, so if the clutch is in gear, I can shut it off, much like I could get with the kill switch. That plug can sit there, and my key is going to kind of come down and sort of sit there. So let's put a big old piece of tape around all that to kind of keep it in place and see if the tank goes on. This, by the way, I added, that's just a short ground wire from another harness. I know that some bikes had them. I couldn't find one on this, but it gives me a solid ground from engine to the chassis of the bike, because where it's been powder coated, I don't know how good the connections are with the bolt. So I just add one of those and it just eliminates a grounding issue. I do it with any of my old cars or bikes or any of my old vehicles that don't have it, because it just adds a whole level of not having to troubleshoot stupid stuff. Okay, tank. I think that's part of the beauty of the whole frame messing that I did, is that the tank sits, a bit above the backbone of the bike, so it actually gives me all that space where this can lock in fine, and it's not even it's touching on the side where the loom is the fattest, but not anything consequential. I'm going to take the tank off. I'm going to get that green and that black reconnected. Just a side note, butane powered soldering iron. I picked this kit up, I don't even know from where, a few years ago. If you're in a situation in which you just got to do some quick little updates, and it also comes with 3 different tips, so you can have a little mini blowtorch end, and it also comes with a little knife, so all 3 you could heat up. So very handy. I've had this for a long time, and it's done me well.
So that's where I'm going to leave it for part 2. The third part of the electrical is going to be testing all the stuff. Now that the loom has been rerun to mostly where it's going to end up sitting, now we can start to test the switches and the lights and the horns and the starters and everything else, and hopefully maybe even get the bike started next time. Stay tuned, subscribe, leave a comment, and we'll see you next time, guys. Cheers.